Okay, so this is part 2 of the Yeush Shelo Mida'at section of our Gemara. So Mitzodek, who is right? Here we have our argument between Abaye and Rava. In the case of there's no Siman, Abaye says that it's not Yeush, he's not allowed to keep it because at that moment he's not Mityaesh, and therefore he has to announce it. And Rava says, no, it is Yeush, he is allowed to keep it because one day, eventually, in 3 days from now, he's going to find out that he lost it, and therefore he'll give up hope. So HaGemara tishtadel leochech kol shita lirot u'laskim lefi mi'alacha kemo. Now the Gemara is going to try proving the 2 different cases who is correct. So the first proof, Raya number 1, is trying to prove Rava is right. So Rava tzodek, how does it do this? So it brings our Mishnah. Tashma, perot mefuzarin. Perot mefuzarin are scattered fruits. We learn in our Mishnah that scattered fruits belong to the finder. Now, ha lo yada de nafal mine, right? The owner doesn't know that it fell from him. So if the owner doesn't know that it fell from him, that means there's no dat. And if our Mishnah tells us that the finder is allowed to keep it, that basically tells me that it's Yeush Shelo Mida'at, he's allowed to keep it, that Rava is right, that it is Yeush. So the Gemara answers, Hama Rav Upa bar Hama. No, this is the rebuttal. This is the knockout of Raya number 1. We're not dealing where the owner does not know that he lost it. He does know that he lost it. Rav Upa bar Hama says, Hacha b'machshanta debeit darei askina. We're dealing with the fruit that was left on the threshing floor. Right? So basically the owner, they're loading up his wagon with his donkeys, but he left this fruit that the Mishnah talks about is on the threshing floor over there scattered. He knows it's there. He knows he lost it, and therefore he just doesn't want to come back. So it's not a case of Yeush Shelo Mida'at. If it was a case of Yeush Shelo Mida'at, you're right. This would be a proof to Rava. But Gemara is saying this is not a case of Yeush Shelo Mida'at because he knows it's there. There is that in this case, and therefore this case of scattered fruits is not a proof to Rava. Let's fast forward here. Here we go. Raya number 2. Raya number 2, again, trying to prove Rava is correct. Tashma, similar case in our Mishnah, Ma'ot mefuzarot hare elu shelo. Here we have a case of scattered money, scattered coins, and yet our Mishnah says that it belongs to him. How can it belong to him? And the finder doesn't know that it fell from him. So we see from here that the finder does keep the coins, even though that the owner doesn't know. So Rava is right. We have a case of Yeush Shelo Mida'at. The owner does not know that the money is scattered, and yet he's allowed to keep it. Doesn't disprove that Rava is right. Says the Gemara, Hachashat Raya number 2. We're looking to the left. No, this is not a good proof according to Rava. Hatam nami kid Rabbi Yitzchak Yamar. This is like what Rabbi Yitzchak says, right? The money case is similar to what Rabbi Yitzchak says. Rabbi Yitzchak once said a rule. This rule, Adam asui lemashmesh bekiso bekol sha'a v'sha'a, that a person is always in the habit of touching his wallet, always. He's always looking where his money is. Kadesh yodea she'akesef shelo shamur, always wants to make sure that his money is safe. Therefore, hachanami adam asui lemashmesh bekiso bekol sha'a v'sha'a. So too here, a person is always constantly checking his wallet, so he knows when his money is missing. So when you see scattered coins on the floor, you cannot assume that the owner doesn't know it's lost. He does know it's lost, and therefore, since the owner is always aware where his money is, we have to assume that he knows that the money is lost, and therefore it's not a case of Yeush Shelo Mida'at, and this cannot prove Rava right. The third proof that again trying to prove Rava right. Tashma, another case from our Mishnah. Igulei dvela v'kikarot shel nachtom hare elu shelo. Round cakes of pressed figs and baker's loaves belong to him. So here we have again cases no siman, all right. Therefore, and yet it's no siman, and it belongs to him. And says the Gemara, Amai v'halo yadan nafal mineh. Why can he keep them if he doesn't know that they fell from him? We see that the owner is not aware of their loss, and yet he can keep them. This is exactly what Rava says. Here's a case of Yeush Shelo Mida'at. There is no knowledge, no awareness by the part of the owner that it's missing, and yet he's allowed to keep it. Does this not prove Rava correct? Says the Gemara on the left side, the Hachasha, the rebuttal against Raya number 3 is no. Hatam nami agav the yakirei. There too, in the case of the figs and the bread, since they are heavy, these are heavy items, they're bulky items, meidaya dabehu. The owner is aware of their loss. Who's not aware when you lose a loaf of bread? It's something that's very bulky. You're aware that you have it, and when you don't have it, you feel that you don't have it. So therefore, this isn't a proof that Rava is right, because clearly here in this case of the cakes of pressed figs and the baker's loaves, that the owner knows that it's lost, and therefore it's not a case of Yeush Shelo Mida'at. Moving on to number 4. Tashma leshonot shel argaman hareu shelo. Another case in our Mishnah where a person is allowed to keep tongues of purple wool. It belongs to him. Gemara says the same thing. Why? He doesn't know that it fell from him. Again, yet we see this is a case of Yeush Shelo Mida'at. He doesn't know. He's not aware that it fell from him, and yet we see that he's allowed to keep it. This is like Rava. So the Gemara attempts to prove Rava again from the case of the tongues of wool that it should belong to him because he's not aware that it's lost. Comes the Gemara and says, Hachasha Raya number 4 on the left side. No, Hatam Nami Agav de Chashive. There too, the wool is something that is very valuable. Wool is something very precious. And whenever we deal with something very precious, kind of like the money, the owner is constantly checking for them, like Rav Yitzchak said about the money. The person is constantly seeing whether or not he still has this wool, and therefore he's going to realize right away when it's lost, and it's not considered a case of Yeush Shelo Mida'at, and therefore, being that it's not a case of Yeush Shelo Mida'at, we cannot use this to prove Rava correct. Moving on to number 5. Tashmam hamotze ma'od bebate knesiot ubate midrashot ubekol makom sharabim metzuyin sham. What happens in a case of the Braita that says if someone finds money in a shul or a study hall or any place where people gather? Says the Braita, hare elu shelo. The guy's allowed to keep it. He finds money in a public place, he's allowed to keep it. Because the owner clearly gave up hope of finding it, right? You own a big market, Machane Yehuda in Yerushalayim, you lose $10, it's gone. How is it possible you're going to find it? But how is the finder allowed to keep it? The guy is walking Machane Yehuda, he doesn't realize that the money fell from him, right? He doesn't know there's so many people over there. So this is a proof to Rava. Because the case of Yeush Shelo Mida'at, it's a case of no da'at over here. There's no knowledge that it fell from him, and yet he's allowed to keep it. This proves Rava right. So Gemara says, no, Amar Rav Yitzchak, same answers we brought before. Adam asur lemashmesh bekiso kol sha'ah. A person is constantly in the habit of touching his wallet at all times, and even in Machane Yehuda, he's checking his money, he's checking to see what he has, and the moment that it falls, he realizes that it falls, and therefore he gives up hope, but he still gives up hope, but at least there's da'at. So this is not a case of Yeush Shelo Mida'at, because there is da'at, there is awareness that it's lost because it's money, and he's always in the habit of touching his money, making sure where it is at all times.